Ah, I have no father. Welcome to World of Monsters, Gods and Goddesses and Deities. I'm Monster Master Arthur, and today we discuss Loki, or also known as Lopter, and other similar sounding names. Yes. That was my very stereotypical representation of Loki. So without further ado, let's jump into a somewhat loose summary of the history of his life. And where better to begin with than his early life? Loki started out as a mischievous rascal, and as time went by, this became even more prevalent in his persona. Let it be known that I will be pronouncing in various accents, but even though I may butcher some of the Old Norse names, I will be trying to pronounce them here. And keep in mind that the Old Norse language is quite different than today's Scandinavian languages. Son of Farbauti and Laufey in Asgard, or Osgarður. His father, Farbauti, meaning cruel striker in Old Norse, was a Jotun, which was a race of giants, and his mother, Laufey, was most likely one as well. He was the brother of Helblindi and Bileister. Much about the ancient family is to this day unclear. In a sense, he was an anti-hero, as he did use his trickery to aid the other gods. But more often than not, he created endless troubles for all. So let's take a look at some of Loki's adventures and tales. He led a mischievous love life, he had multiple affairs, and even gave birth in animal/female form. You see, when a brick mason demanded an unreasonable price for building Asgard's walls, or Osgarður's walls, he demanded the sun, moon, and Freya, the goddess of love, war, and sorcery. Loki made him a deal to build the wall in 6 months, and thinking that the mason would surely fail, made him an offer of completion in 6 months. The other gods approved of this, of course, all except for Freya. As the mason neared completion, the gods started to threaten Loki. It seemed that the mason was going to succeed. In fear, Loki changed into a mare, a female horse, and seduced Spaldirfari, the mason stallion, away from his master. This greatly slowed down the mason's building progression, and the union of Loki and Spaldirfari, the two horses, created Sleipnir, an 8-legged steed, later to become Odin's mount. That's a sample of some of the weird things that come about when shapeshifted beings breed with other creatures. Eventually, Loki becomes discontent with his wife, goddess Sigyn, with whom he fathered Narfi and Vali. So he then went on to having an affair with Angerboda, a giantess, who thereafter gave birth to 3 monstrous children: Fenrir, a wolf; Jormungandr, meaning huge monster, a humongous serpent, the world serpent that encircled the entire earth; and the goddess Hel, who later receives a portion of the dead, the normal dead, not the ones that die in battle, but the ones that die from sickness, old age, etc. in her realm of Hel, Hel, spelled the same as her name, within Niflheim, meaning world of mists, the realm of ice and cold. So throughout the many tales involving Loki, his persona is revealed to be dishonorable, cowardly, more and more so until his latest malevolent act. Balder, or Baldur, a god loved by most, a son of Odin himself, who even emitted light along with his other wonderful attributes of joy, purity, innocence, peace, and reconciliation, held the unfortunate prophecy of an early death. Frigg, his mother, secured promises from all living things to never harm her son, except one, the mistletoe. Loki, finding this out, constructs a mistletoe spear and instructs the blind god Hod, or Hodr, to throw it at Balder. Hence Loki indirectly killing Balder. Loki probably even persisted to keep Balder in Hel, the realm of the dead, even though advances were made of bringing him back to the living. Loki was then chased away by Thor, who threatened to smash his head with his mighty hammer. and then only later to be found and bound to a rock by the entrails of his son Narfi, who had been killed by his other son Vali after being transformed into a voracious wolf. A venomous snake was placed above Loki that would drip venom onto his body, causing Loki great pain. His faithful wife, Sigyn, would try to help by collecting it into a bowl, but every time she walked away to empty the bowl, the venom would drip onto him, causing him to writhe painfully, which created earthquakes. And there he lay until Ragnarok, the destruction of the world. Factions. What factions did Loki have? God of trickery and mischief, also known as the God of fire. The true God of fire? No, not a god of literal fire, but the god of the personification of fire. Fire personified. His relationship among the gods was a dwindling spiral, ending with only his wife Sigyn's continued loyalty despite his numerous affairs. Not all evil, Loki was indeed nihilistic. He ignored the gods and strived to overcome them and what they stood for. Abilities and appearance, this should be interesting. Extreme shapeshifting. When I say extreme shapeshifting, we're not just speaking of shapeshifting into beasts of similar size, but we're talking the ability to change sex and size completely. Loki has been known to appear as a fly, a salmon, a seal. And yes, that's right, I said a fly. So what are the limitations of his shapeshifting abilities? Manipulation, of course, is mental craftiness, which leads to his trickery and his reputation as the trickster. He has been described as pleasing and handsome, illustrated with blonde to dark hair, and quite often with a beard. He was a giant and, well, arguably a god. Representation. So what did Loki really represent? This is not easy to decode, as much of the mythos has been lost, and what is left is still quite debatable. In the ancient days before the takeover of Christianity, wrong and right, good and evil was not as clear-cut. Loki represented those opposing intentions that would appear very contrasted to the attributes of, say, Thor, who had a very righteous presence. A more primitive representation of the chaotic side of the polars, or more complex to the later introduction of the totally evil devil? Loki can remind us that everything, even irreverence, something of unimportance, is ultimately worthy of reverence and respect. Finally, let's look at some more visual sources trying to represent Loki. Aside from Loki's appearances in Marvel's Thor, The Avengers, and 2011 Almighty Thor, there may be a better historic representation within Hercules' The Legendary Journeys. And there's also a small glimpse of the representation of Loki in the 1994 The Mask. Yes, the mask was of Loki himself. And should we even mention The Mask Part 2? Alright. Thank you for watching this episode, this first episode within the Gods, Goddesses, and Deities playlist on the World of Monsters channel. I'm Monster Master Arthur. Please do let me know what deity, god, or goddess you would like me to discuss next. This has been Monster Master Arthur. Thank you for watching.